Welcome back to Amplify Your Garden. So we decided to switch up how we did our YouTube videos, and instead of us being out and about, we decided to have more of a sit-down conversation between Hannah and I and some special guests that we'll bring in as the weeks go on. So without further ado, let's dive into it.
Yeah.
This week, why do people garden? Hannah, why do you garden?
I garden, well, mostly I wrote down a few notes. And the first thing I wrote down was that the reason that I got into gardening was because I originally got into houseplants. And
Gotcha.
I started with houseplants, and I filled my house with plants. I didn't have any more room, so I went outside. And so that was probably about 2-3 years ago. And the first few gardens, I'm doing gardening. This is probably my third year trying to start a garden. And the first year didn't go very well. But
First year gardens are tough.
Exactly, yeah. The second year went a little better, and then will be the third year. But so I guess to answer the question, I started it really starting with houseplants. And then I was like, well, if I can do houseplants, then I'm sure that I could do outdoor plants because they seem easier.
They are easier. I think so, because I started with the garden and went to houseplants. And this is my first year with houseplants. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. It's like, in my opinion, houseplants aren't meant to be in the house. Like, they just are.
Right.
Because depending on where you live, like, they don't survive in the winter times and stuff. But in my mind, the outdoor plants, like vegetable plants and garden plants and stuff, perennials, those are meant to be outside. So like they'll live and they'll survive better than my house plants. And I'm like, that's a win for me. So that's why I got started with gardening. And I enjoy it, and getting like an actual like reward like that you can hold in your hand.
The fruit of your labor.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just very rewarding, and it's a nice little hobby to have.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Yeah, I actually wrote down a couple notes too, but I'll piggyback off of what you started with. So I started with the garden and went into houseplants. And my first garden was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it was awful, absolutely horrendous. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of, can't be that hard, right?
Right.
And now year 6 or 7 into it, the gardens are established. So that first year is tough. And for me, it was the weeds, because had been grass, and then I put a garden in, and then the grass just kept growing. So keeping ahead of that was challenging. But after that first year, then it started to become therapeutic to me. Then it started to become, more of a hobby. And now my husband would probably say it's more of an addiction than a hobby.
It's a good addiction, though.
Right. So that's what else did I write down?
I also started, like, where I live, we have a garden that was there before we moved in.
Right.
I don't think if that wasn't there, I probably would have never started. Well, not never, but
it would have been harder to get started.
Yeah, it was already there, and that's, I don't know, kind of the reason that we got started, because it was already there. Why not give it a try? And I should say the first few years are still kind of rough. Like, this year, I'm sure won't be the best year gardening for me.
Yeah.
But I'm getting stuff out of it, and that's the whole point.
You're also learning what that garden produces well and what it doesn't, because each garden is a little different. Like, for me, there's some things that I just don't grow because they don't do well, so I don't waste my time or my space. Carrots is one of them. My first year garden, I tried to grow carrots, and it was rock hard, and I got no carrots. So now I plant them somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. So I guess it goes to show that you can't fail at gardening. You just have to learn what works for your garden.
Right. Because it'll always grow. Something will grow.
Unless you. Like, here, we just literally dug up some dirt, or dug up some grass,
Right.
And
we got radishes that we were surprised we got.
Right. And I guess this whole show and this whole platform is to show you can be starter, you can be mid-level, you can be expert, and there's always still stuff to learn, and different tips. And
for sure. I don't know, like, what is an expert gardener? Like, I still feel like I'm very much a beginner.
You're never going to know everything.
No.
There's always going to be
something
stuff to
new,
learn.
And something new to try. So I think we're getting a little off topic, but that's okay. So another reason, and this is kind of odd, but I garden because I hate to go to the grocery store. Like, it's the bane of my existence. So the more I can grow, the less I have to go to the grocery store, or the less I have to buy at the grocery store.
Yeah, and
so it's a quicker trip.
I feel like that's a lot of people's reasoning too, is to save money. Like, I know a lot of our family and friends, like they garden too. I was actually just talking with a family friend, and they were telling us how they just planted, like, I think it was 20 rows of green beans or something, and they have like 6 kids, so they have a big family, but they can it all, and they'll eat it throughout the winter, and that will, like, it in the long run, you really are saving so much money. By
it just
planting all of your produce instead of buying it from the store.
Right.
I think that's also another reason why a lot of people garden.
Yeah, and I do that too. So we can I can a lot of the tomato products, so pasta sauce, pizza sauce, things of that. But then when it comes to like green beans and sweet corn, I freeze it because it's faster, mostly.
Right.
But that's what. So I'll put out a whole bunch of green beans and a whole bunch of broccoli because that's what we eat the most of, and then I don't have to buy it. And then I shouldn't say that, because about like June, July is when we run out, and I'll have to buy some stuff. But if I'm only buying stuff 2 months out of the year, that's pretty good. Or maybe I should just plant more.
Right.
And do that too.
Just dig up some more soil.
Just take up more space.
Yeah.
Because I know you'll agree with this, there's no such thing as too many plants. The limit does not exist.
There is no limit. The world is your oyster. There's no limit. There's always going to be more room.
Or make room.
Right.
Or just ignore, proper spacing. That's always an option too.
Right. Yeah. I know a lot of other people tend to garden because I feel like when you grow it at your own home or a family member's home, wherever you're growing your garden, you know where it's coming from.
Right.
Like it's it's local because it's your own home most of the time. And it's something that almost you can control, I guess. Like, you know where it's coming from. You know it wasn't sitting in a warehouse for sprayed with stuff. Like, there's so many reasons. There's so many different controlling aspects of and you can get what you want. Like, if you're starting from seed, you have much more variety than what you would at the grocery store. Yeah,
because like we have green zebras out here, and we were able to get that because we started it from seed, and it's somewhat of a specialty. You're not going to get that at a grocery store. And I shouldn't say that. You might be able to find it at a grocery store, but it's going to be extremely expensive to find it. So yeah, I would agree, because I seen something the other day that said you don't have to read the label when you're the one that puts the food in the jar. And that resonated with me because I can, and I freeze and stuff.
Right.
And probably half of our food is stuff that we grow.
Right.
And I don't even pay attention
because you know it, because you know straight where it's coming from.
Yeah. I know how it was grown and what I did to get a product out of it.
Right. And I know that's probably not like the main reason why people garden, because like, at least for me, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not quite worried about where the tomatoes coming from, but it is a plus to it though. You know, like it may not be your reason, but it's an added bonus, if it's not.
For sure. For sure. And especially with, as we become more aware of what's in our food and have a need to know where it came from.
Right.
I think that is important. And like for me with the kids, it's great to have the kids with me too, because they think every vegetable comes from the garden.
Yeah.
Like that's what they think, and I'm just gonna let them
think their mom is this master gardener.
Yeah, and that is far from the truth, but they'll eat green beans all day long if it came from the garden. So that's good, and then it teaches them where their food is coming from.
Yeah.
So that's another added bonus of just there's an education piece for young kids as well.
Right. Another thing that I have written down, which we kind of touched on this, it's a time-consuming hobby, but there's always something that you can be doing with your garden. So I guess that would be another reason of why people garden. It's a hobby.
Right.
I don't know, you're feeling stressed, go to the garden and pull some weeds.
I do that. I'll take my shoes off and do it too. And that that is something to talk about too, just being outside
Mhm.
barefoot in the soil, having that grounding experience. I'm not exactly sure what happens, but for me, when I'm barefoot, I feel better. Like it's an
Mhm.
instant release um, of stress just to be outside
Yeah.
in the garden, pulling weeds, getting that stress out. And, sometimes and everybody's different. Like
Right.
for some people, those weeds are a stressor and they
Mhm.
need to escape those weeds to decompress. I'm on the other side. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think this even goes for maybe you're a gardener, but you aren't gardening vegetables and fruits, but you're
right,
on the other side of it and like landscaping.
right.
Even with the landscaping, like I know I have a couple of different potted plants out on our
Mm-hmm.
porches that we have, and um, they need watered every day or
Right.
so. And when I'm feeling stressed, I just go outside and water them.
Yep.
Same with the garden. But I think that it's a pretty big reason why a lot of people garden as
Yeah.
well.
And I'm glad you brought that up because gardening just isn't, an in-ground vegetable garden or a
Mm-hmm.
raised bed, but it's your landscaping, it's your potted plants, it's those perennials in your landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's this whole term called productive landscaping that folks are starting to get into and that I've started to get into too. So I have lavender bushes for not that I do anything with them, but that could
For
be
the
used
looks.
for
But you can use them
I
for
could,
other reasons
other
or for other
things.
things if you
Yeah.
wanted.
So
Yeah.
there is that aspect of it, and it doesn't have to be just vegetables, but you can do your perennials in your landscaping. That's gardening because
Mm-hmm.
you have to take care of those and get those to produce their blooms so they can go to seed to get to the next growing season.
Right.
But then also fruit gardening.
Right.
So you could have just a rhubarb bush or a raspberry bush or a
Yeah.
grapevine, and that all is gardening. It doesn't have to be your tomatoes, peppers, onions, things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. There's a
And
whole
yeah, and to back off that, I think another reason, not I won't say this is the reason why I started the garden, but when we moved into the house we're at now, the previous owners had a rhubarb bush out behind the shed. And I honestly, that like when we moved in, I didn't know what that was. I thought it was just a bush. Like I didn't know it was a rhubarb plant. But
mm-hmm.
seeing like how easily that was, granted it's a perennial, it comes
Yeah,
back every year. You don't really have to do much taking care of it.
right.
But it was, I don't know, it just felt nice to be able to cut something and now you have this fruit, this produce.
Right.
I don't like rhubarb, but I know a lot of my family does.
Yeah.
So like just to be able to give family
Yeah.
members a piece of my garden, I think that's another reason is
Yeah.
sharing it. I think
For
I
sure.
am such a gift giver and
Yeah.
I'm such
That's your
a
love language.
yes, I love giving people things and especially stuff that is homemade or that comes from a garden that I'm
Right.
tending to.
Right.
I think that's another main reason why I enjoy it so much is just thinking about what I can give because
Mhm.
I know I'm not eating everything coming from my
Right.
garden.
Right.
But I think that's another big reason that a lot of people like to garden as well, at
Yeah.
least for me.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that in two ways. So when we bought our house, there was a raspberry bush or not a raspberry bush, a rhubarb bush that had already been well established.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that rhubarb, that led into us getting some raspberry bushes and us
Mm-hmm.
getting some strawberry plants because what's better than rhubarb and raspberry pie or strawberry rhubarb jam?
Mm-hmm.
So that one rhubarb bush led to
the other fruits.
The other fruits.
You needed to pair it with something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just eating straight rhubarb.
Right.
But then also with that is the sharing aspect. So there's a lot of sharing that can happen, whether it's with friends and family or even charities or food banks. They all welcome that fresh produce. Or actually, I've donated frozen peppers and tomatoes from last year's garden for a meal prepping event for grieving families. I mean, that's to be able to share the produce with the people you love or causes that resonate with you is hugely impactful. And
Right.
I would say that is, maybe that's not why I started gardening, but that is
It's another
definitely
plus.
a plus and added benefit.
And I definitely think if you are somebody who loves to share and donate and do that kind of work, I think gardening is such a great way to do that because it's not that expensive when you're starting from seed.
Right.
And you get so many plants if you have the room, obviously.
Right.
If you have the room
Right.
to garden and you enjoy it, it's just another added benefit. And to go off of that, I think farmers markets are getting so much they're popping up everywhere
Yes.
nowadays in a good way. It's great. I love it. But I think if you're wanting to start, gardening and it's another great way for like a little side business.
Right.
Sell produce, because I feel like in smaller areas like ours here in New Bremen and St. Mary's and Mariestein, that I feel like the surrounding towns are they're amping up in the
that market space.
Yes, in the market space, and there's a lot more popping up nowadays.
For sure.
And who doesn't love like going to a farmer's market and picking up some tomatoes from your neighbor down the street that grew them,
yeah, for sure. And with that, with the markets and the garden, that creates a community.
Mm-hmm.
Like just because I know I've found that, when people find out you're growing XYZ,
mm-hmm.
then they start, asking questions, and then that helps build a community, but then also educate that person to maybe try it in their garden.
Right.
or I've never really got into that vegetable, but maybe since you're growing it in your garden, I'll give it a try.
Right.
Things of that. So it does it
right.
gives you an outlet to share, but it also gives an outlet to build a community. And really that's what we're doing.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to do here
with this platform.
with Amplify Your Garden. We're just trying to get people who maybe you haven't started a garden yet, but you're interested in it. That's kind of the whole goal of this. Or you have started and you're wanting to learn more and do better and really gain your knowledge in this area of expertise, which you can't ever know too much about it.
Right, and I don't see this as ever being an endpoint where you have completed all levels.
Because we're still learning too. We don't know everything.
No,
we don't know,
absolutely not.
Anywhere, especially me. I don't know anywhere near everything about gardening. So I'm learning along with this as well.
Right, and as am I. So the way that we're doing the garden here at the lab is much different than how I run my gardens at home, and that's perfect.
And I think it's probably a lot for the viewers too. It's probably a lot different than how they do it.
Right.
Because your standard garden is normally just, a rectangle or square.
And you the whole thing up.
So I'm learning just doing this one here, how it may be better, worse, who knows? We'll have to see and find out. But how it's different and how I didn't even realize it was an option when it came to gardening.
And I think that's something else is there's not a wrong way to do it.
Right.
There's so many different options of how to do it. So you can grow tomatoes in pots, or you can grow potatoes in laundry baskets.
You can grow. I know I've heard of people growing like strawberries in hanging pots, and you can
buy them that way.
Yeah. So like I had last year, I bought a raspberry bush and a blackberry bush, and the tag said pot.
Pot friendly or whatever.
Which I will say neither of them have came back this year in the pot. So I don't know if I would take that. But again, it's just another example of that I'm learning.
Right.
We'll see. I don't know. But I don't know. I think there's just so many different ways and places, and no matter your space, you can make it work for you. You don't have to have this huge, massive garden to be a gardener or to start.
For sure.
Like you could live in an apartment and have a little raised bed on your balcony,
or have a tomato plant growing in a window, or actually we've had this discussion before about growing herbs in your kitchen. I mean, there's so many different avenues, and really you can put as much money into it or as little as you want, and still be fruitful in that regard.
Right.
So what is there any other things why you like to garden?
I think we touched on a lot of it, and I guess the one thing we did touch on, but the one other thing I have written down is I feel like a lot of people do it out of necessity too, with canning, which we did touch on, but my fiance's parents, they do salsa, spaghetti sauce, jams every single year. Their whole entire house smells like tomatoes. That whole month of August and into September, and it's the hottest month, so like it's just. But I won't complain because I'll happily go over there every single year if I get a couple cans of tomato sauce and spaghetti and spaghetti sauce and tomatoes and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, and right now, I'm glad you brought up salsa, because right now we're getting into the last bits of not last year's salsa, but the year before. So I don't can everything every single year. I do it in rotation. So in 2023, I can salsa, and we're getting into the last bits of that. And there is nothing better than chilled salsa, lime tortilla chips, and a campfire. That is top notch. And you can't beat fresh salsa.
No, it's so good. Yeah, so I don't know. That's a big reason for me. Like I need that salsa for you.
Right. Because once you have it, like once you go through the work of putting it out and then canning it and preserving it, and then even when it's in the middle of winter, when it's just cold and you're snuggled up on the couch with a hot chocolate,
you just remember that salsa's in the basement.
In there. It's the depths of winter, and I have some seasonal depression, but I've got a jar of summer.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I would say that's another reason why I garden is, somewhat out of necessity, but also in those cold winter months, or when the garden's, like right now, when the garden's out, but there's no produce yet, it's nice to have
a waiting period.
It's a way to get through that waiting period for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think those are a lot of the main reasons. And I think the reason that we wanted to do this video, the why to garden, is because I don't know, if I was not somebody who had a garden or who gardened at all, and it was something that I was interested in but didn't know if it was for me or if I would get anything out of it, I feel like watching a video like this might be helpful. Because there are so many different reasons of why do people garden. Right. It's not just because I want to can. It's not just because I want to save money. It's not just because I want XYZ out of it.
For sure.
Some people have one reason, some people have 8 reasons. Like it's not a one size fits all. And I think I don't know if this video is the push you needed to start.
Right.
Go start.
And if you are starting and you're like, where do I start? And you're overwhelmed, that is normal. But you don't need to do everything that first year.
I'm 3 years in and I'm still overwhelmed.
Me too.
It's not. And don't let that turn you away either. It's almost like the fun of it. It's like you
just have to get started. Take that first step.
And it'll be very, very much so worth it.
And if maybe you're having that thought now and you think it's too late to put out a garden, or you don't have time right now, but you want to next year, well, just start thinking about, what do I want to plant next year? And then throughout the summer, maybe start mapping out where you want your garden, or start till up that soil, this fall, because that'll help with the weeds next year. Little things like that you don't have to do everything all at once, because that's where the overwhelm comes in. Right. So pick a couple things that you think you and your family would enjoy and start there. Don't try to do everything all at once.
Right. And maybe you could touch on this more, but I have not planted my garden yet. It's May 28th. I have all the plants and everything, but I'm planting it this week. And something that I've always wondered, and maybe you can answer this question, is like, if I have a tomato plant, it's ready and it's in its little
cell.
Yeah. Could I plant that in the middle of June? Yeah. If it's like, there's no,
as long as you're after that last frost, and really the weather here in Ohio has not been very nice.
Right.
To get out gardens.
That is the reason that I haven't planted mine yet.
It's been wet, and then it dries out for maybe 30 minutes, and then it's wet again.
It's raining again. Yeah.
So, and usually when it's dry for that 30 minutes, it's during the work week or during the work day, so you can't sneak out real fast. Right. But for sure, you can, as long as you're past that last frost, and those tomatoes will keep growing until that first frost in the fall.
And that's kind of what I wanted to point out, is just because you didn't plant around, the saying is plant around Mother's Day. And I guess when you plant around Mother's Day, you can expect the tomatoes or the peppers, whatever you're planting, to be ready by whenever they're supposed to be ready. But it doesn't mean that you can't plant after that. Right. They just may be ready a little bit later.
And also, what I do, or what I've learned to do, is whenever I plant everything all in one day, then it all comes ripe at the same time. And I'm one person, and I can't preserve all that or can all that at the same time. So I will actually stagger my planting, so that way my preservation is staggered. Again, all weather dependent. If Mother Nature is provides, a window for getting in there, and then she might provide the window, but you're not available to do it. Like you might have something pre-planned, or you thought it was going to rain this day, so you made plans that now you can't get out of, and then it doesn't rain. So that stuff happens. But for sure, if it's the middle of June and your garden's not out yet and it's ready, by all means go ahead. Now, if it's August, maybe not.
But you really have the whole summer.
You have June, July, and August.
And I guess I always viewed it as like this tiny little time frame window that I had to get everything in the ground, and it's really not the case. No. You really have whenever you want to get started, and if, just make sure you're looking at like the maturity dates, frost dates, so you can plant stuff the end of April. That's fine, but you really got to watch. You take a chance. You got to watch the weather. If it's going to frost or get too cold, you really got to cover those tomato plants up. I know I ran into that. My tomatoes were out, and it didn't freeze, it didn't frost, but it got 40 degrees, and they look a little sad right now, but they'll be all right. No, but that's all the reasons that I have listed down that I think a lot of people enjoy. Why a lot of people enjoy gardening,
for sure, that they can resonate with.
But
yeah, so that's what we have today for Why to Garden. Be sure to like and subscribe, and so you never miss an episode. And we will be back.
And we hope that this new way of filming and this new
format
is more engaging and comes across as we're just having a conversation. And it's an open conversation. So I think this will be very beneficial.
And I like that you said that, because you said an open conversation, and I've got things listed here. And we talked about all the things I have listed, but there's so much more that came out of our conversation that I think, this is somewhat, prompted, but there's a whole avenue for conversation. And that would be more, like you said, more engaging, more interactive, instead of just one person sitting in front of a camera and just blabbing.
So I think let us know why you guys garden. I'm sure there's tons of other different reasons from what we just said. So that's it for this video. But
we'll see you next time.